Jeroge, many thanks indeed, and we will be returning to our city center studios for the news at the top of the hour. Now, the impact of money on politics and party financing, that is the topic of our discussion tonight. And our big question tonight: should candidates be required to make public the source of their campaign funds? Should candidates be required to make public the source of their campaign funds? That will be our big question tonight. Please send us your opinion on that question. We will sample your responses at the end of Newsnight tonight. Now, may I introduce my guest for tonight, Dr. Charles Otieno, a public policy analyst. Welcome to the program today.
Thank you.
I'm going to start off by looking at one of the issues that's come up in the recent by-election, the question of how much are individuals spending on their campaigns. We have heard certain individuals or several individuals saying they have spent up to 100 million shillings on campaigning. Now, this whole question of funding, what exactly is the scenario?
For many years, we've had problems with the political financing in Kenya. We've had various political candidates who are running for political offices, particularly the members of parliament, financing the elections through the various sources of campaign finances. It's not clear how much the various candidates spent in the last by-election. Sometimes we also have to be very careful with members or candidates who declare just how much they spend, because they might do it also to scare their opponents. But the truth is that politicians or candidates need money to fight elections. Just like commercial advertising, political campaigns are like commercial advertising. You have to spend a lot of money to get noticed. The problem is that there's a link between the money that politicians spend to fight elections with the corruption, both at the local and national level.
Before we look at the link between corruption and the money that politicians spend, let's look at the issue of democratic participation. In terms of democratic participation by the citizens, how much of the victories that politicians get can be attributed for the people's actual need for change, and how much of it is just as a result of the handouts?
I think
is
much
this a culture
of it,
now?
Yeah, it is a culture. We expect politicians actually to sort us out. We don't attend political parties because we are idle. We attend political parties because political campaigns because we expect the candidates actually to give us something. You don't see the youth running around the constituencies screaming the candidate's name because they're idle. They've been paid to do that. You don't see the women dancing around the member of parliament or political candidates because they're idle. They've been paid to do that. A lot of money is spent in mobilizing voters, organizing the youth, the women actually, to go out there and send a message across. And it's about telling your opponent that I'm the best, I've got the biggest following in the constituency, therefore I'm going to win this election. And it's also about sending your message across and getting noticed. The link between the people that really vote in election and the money that they get, quite often you find that most people, and the trend in Kenya is that the people will take money, but they'll never vote for the particular candidate. But there are people who will take the money, but they'll vote. The problem is that the money that politicians spend in terms of buying votes or voter bribery is never enough actually to convince a voter to really vote the way they want to. But sometimes you find that it's easy to buy maybe 13,000 voters in a constituency. But the power of actually managing to mobilize the vote depends on the electoral machinery that you put in a constituency.
Where is this money coming from, though?
That is the problem. That is a problem because the laws are not clear or in terms of demanding whether members of parliament or candidates, political candidates should declare where they get their money from to fight elections. The law also does not demand that they explain to us just where they spend that money. So it's never clear exactly whether we know where candidates are getting their money and what they're spending it on. But we know that a large majority of that money, if not spent on advertising and getting people out, getting the youth and the women to campaign for them, there's a lot of money also that is spent on actual voter bribery, so cash for vote.
So should individuals be made liable to reveal their sources of funding?
Yes, and I think if we want clean politics, it's only important that we get politicians actually to reveal their sources of funding, whether they're getting that money from, whether is it from their wealth. But also we need to know what they're spending it on. Are they spending it on campaign materials, or they're spending it on bribing the youth to get drunk in the constituency? So the law should require members of parliament actually, first of all, not political candidates, to declare their sources of funding. And that also should mean that they declare their wealth before they run for political offices. Because one way of, it's one thing for the public actually to donate money to a political candidate. So you can give 10,000, 20,000. But it's another thing for an individual to give a political candidate 20 million to fight an election, because what's there for them? Are they giving it because they're expecting something back, or they're giving it because they're generous? There has to be something that comes back when you give a politician 20 million to fight an election.
Now, in mature democracies, though, there is a ceiling as to how much you can actually give a political candidate.
Yes.
What does the law say about Kenya?
We have, the law requires parties actually to disclose their sources of funding, and also the law restricts certain sources of funding. For example, we can't get money coming out of foreign governments, of international organizations into political parties. But the law is not very clear on individuals. That's where there's a big loophole. We don't expect individuals actually to disclose their sources of funding. We don't expect individuals actually we don't expect people who donate money to political parties actually, or to candidates, to say, this is how much I've given this political party or a political candidate. So you find that the loophole now is in between the individuals. And we're going to see a lot of this with presidential candidates, with senators, with governors, where they'll be able to source campaign funding from individuals and businesses that we'll never know exactly who these people are and what they expect in return.